Welcome to Think Free with Stephen
and Daniel.
Two brothers breaking down ideas and ways of thinking about this thing we call life. Unlock your mind to explore more than you ever thought possible. Think Free. We have got a guest with us today. Isaiah Preston's here in our living room. It's myself and Daniel, the normals, and we've got Princess the cat sitting with us as well.
She does not normally join us.
No.
I think she saw me and felt welcome enough.
She did. Yeah, we've actually got two guests. I'm not sure how much we'll hear from Princess, but Princess the cat is here. Made an appearance.
Thanks for joining us.
Sure.
Yeah, glad you could come.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I've been here since first episode. I think it was the first review as well.
Were you?
Super
Okay.
into this whole thing you guys are doing.
So you're one of the OG listeners, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, we appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just talking about things, talking about the worlds, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Right and wrong, it's not the point here. It's very cool.
Well, if we ever have any sponsors, we'll give you the first 5% off discount code to use.
I expect nothing less.
So I think what our listeners are most hungry to hear about is, who is Isaiah Preston? How would you define yourself? What makes you you?
Oh, man. Well, do you want the real or the pretend answer?
Yep. Start with one and we'll try to figure it out.
Okay.
Yeah. You pick one and we'll try to figure if it's pretend or real.
Okay. Okay. Isaiah Preston, son and nephew of Stephen and Daniel.
Okay.
19 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Currently working and at school, studying engineering.
Pronouns.
He, him.
Okay.
I'd like to say I have a pretty bright outlook on life, a lot of energy, like to do things, see the world. I want to get out, do stuff. I like problem solving. I like figuring out how things work.
Mm-hmm.
I like challenging things. I like working out, as we talked about a little bit.
Yeah, we're just talking about that. Mm-hmm.
I don't know. You've known me for 19 years. What other things would you say?
What are you most dissatisfied with your current circumstances, like in your general life right now?
What am I most? The weather.
Weather,
I
okay.
hate.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're looking for?
That's kind of what I was expecting you to say. Yeah.
Yeah.
Want to see if there's anything else.
Yeah, it does not go well with getting out and doing things. Having it cloudy all the time and winter and.
Yeah. We live in a northern climate, and so especially this time of year, we have to put up with a lot of cloud cover and short days. And
yes, very short days.
And
yes.
It's a great time for introspection and reflection and raising one's fist to the heavens and cursing the lack of sunlight. So
what do you guys think? Was that the real or the fake?
I mean, it sounded pretty real, I guess, for what most of us would think. What do you think?
I would say real.
Yeah, that's what I know of you.
As far as human experience and what we see around us, that would be pretty real. But in my opinion, that's just about as fake as it gets.
Okay.
Ooh, tell me more.
So you touched a little bit on story and the games we played.
Right. 2 of our most popular episodes to date.
Raving reviews and
reviews.
listens all across the world.
Out of all
Flat Earth actually is, but
Is it the most popular?
Is it
yes,
really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty cool.
You have to ruin my
I know.
game with facts.
It's
don't
across all platforms
Yes.
too.
Okay.
Just to throw that in there. Yeah. So kind of what's your summary, Stephen, of
what?
stories, games we play? Like you talked about, we all like make things up and have these like layers we put over what happened.
Right. Yeah. So they're kind of two sides of the same coin. That we invent stories to interpret our reality, because reality is nothing more than stories, and then the games we play are the things that we decide the stories that we decide we want to follow, or the stories that we decide we want to engage with or care about or give meaning to. And then we can have different games, and we can have different stories, and how we mix and match those, or to the degree that we believe that they're real or true, is what informs our decisions. And
So the story is kind of reality as we know it, and then the games are what we choose to pick out from there and focus on.
yeah, I think they're, like I said, kind of the same coin or overlap. Both are subjective and objective, in a sense that there is no objectivity outside of subjectivity. So
Correct.
you
Correct.
can't have a story,
And that's exactly my
Yeah.
point. Is the person that I've just described and created through 19 years and pretended has any meaning is exactly that, just a story.
a story. Okay.
And only real according to humans, which is as real as it gets as far as we know.
yeah.
But still just completely made up. I could change it. I could die. I could be forgotten. I could.
And so Daniel and I are both sitting here going, yeah, that sounds real, is us saying we're believing the same story, or we're
Exactly.
playing the same game.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And agreeing under the circumstances that humans have to agree to be able to live and work and have a family, and to experience all this fake stuff is to pretend it's real.
To function. Yeah.
Yeah.
So are you stating that is because you were living not your true self, but to be able to conform to that story?
Not quite. It's more of to say there is no true self. It is just, in the sense that you're saying, like, you're like trying to find who I really am. It's just I'm more of touching on, if you do find, quote unquote, who you truly are, or if you are pretending to be someone, whatever it is, whatever you're doing, and I'll try to go in depth and explain the reasoning for this, but outside of all of that, beyond it all, it's all just pretend. It's all games we're playing. All of the, you talked a little bit about, like, maybe you're mad at work, or you have a problem or a conflict, or something
Right.
goes wrong. All of that is just completely made up. And that touches a little bit, and it comes from a little bit from nihilism, which I'm super, super into, which you talked about a little bit too.
I think so.
Yeah.
Probably got it from you, though. So.
I was going to ask that because you talked about it. I was wondering who, because obviously neither of us created it, but who kind of like came across it first. Because I think it was like 2021 that I really started thinking heavily about it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you...
You're saying like when I first discovered that as
when did you catch on to it a little bit? Yeah.
I don't know.
Who got it from who?
Yeah.
Or maybe we both came to it on our own.
Probably, yeah. It was a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek joke to say that. But I think a lot of your journey I've mirrored or echoed or been parallel with. Because up to for the majority of my life, I've been solidly an optimist, solidly glass half full, and rose-colored glasses, and seen a lot more hope in the world. So the last 7 to 10 years has brought a shift. So before that, I wouldn't have had much experience or identity with that, other than just from a theoretical standpoint. So it's probably some definitely parallel there.
So interesting just how unique and different we all are. And we two brothers go through very similar situations and circumstances, and ultimately travel down a same path together. But I would say that I was more pessimistic before deconstruction, and much more optimistic overall after deconstruction. Yeah.
So
Interesting.
Nihilism was something you're very familiar.
No,
That's what I
I
was gonna
wasn't.
ask,
No, I wasn't. But saying when I was in the throes of growing up and being in the church and Christianity, I would say compared to now, I had much more pessimism growing up and even adult years prior to deconstructing.
Okay.
And so it was just interesting.
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to go on a tangent, just merely saying like,
Yeah.
oh, wow, I love hearing differences, especially when, a lot of times our own experience is the only experience we have. And so to not have sometimes deep conversations, you don't have these types of conversations with everybody. So that's why I love, I remember another time where I was like, oh, I didn't think that was how people thought. So I love hearing that, or even just love hearing, your experience from
Right.
that.
Right.
So for our listeners, nihilism is kind of the idea that outside of religion and higher truth or anything like that, it's basically says that whatever might be true, don't want to butcher this.
I actually just Googled it
You have-
before I came over here because I was like, I want to make sure I know what that word is.
Oh yeah, that's sick.
Hold on, let me see if I can get it here. So it's the nihilism is the definition is the rejection of all religious and moral principles in the belief that life is meaningless. So extreme skepticism, maintaining that nothing in the world has a real existence.
Exactly, yeah. And so I kind of stumbled upon this without actually knowing the definition or anything. A few years back, definitely going through it, and just had this idea of what if it was all for nothing. And
Random chaos.
not even as much random chaos, but just 80 years from now. I think I saw this one YouTube video. It was Odd Ones Out. Really, he just touched on it for a second, and it I was like, what did he just say? It was basically, he said in 500 years, which on the scale of human existence is
Right.
nothing, truly
Yeah.
a blink of an eye, I am completely gone. I'm completely forgotten everything I've ever done, unless the rare case I become famous, which is definitely not happening. Everyone I know who's ever said my name is completely gone. There is no Isaiah forever after that.
Right.
And so what is all of this if in that minuscule amount of time my entire existence is completely over? What is the value of that existence? And that spiraled me way down. And why am I doing any of this? What is this is terrible. This is awful. Oh my gosh. I thought there was value. I'm like,
And you were 16, 17 years old?
yeah. Lot of ego death, which I'll get back to,
Okay.
which I hope I'm not misusing that here, but it's essentially just the ideas, the quote unquote ego, the ideas I had built up and valued and said, this is Isaiah and this is what I believe in, was all failing. And that was the ego death for me.
Yeah. I think you're using it in a way that makes sense to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then after that, it was pretty rough for a while. There was a shift as soon as all of that, in my opinion, once the ego had not fully, but died quite a bit, at least in the regards that I had valued before I found nihilism.
Right.
Once that had deconstructed quite a bit, there was this shift to, wait, if none of this matters, and again, it's a big if, I have no idea what's true and what's not. If none of it matters, pretending that's true, then what is the risk? There's this pain I might feel, but that pain also has no value. So it really isn't painful.
Like, what do you have to lose?
Yeah. There's this, I'm going to be dead in 80 years. So why not go do this risky thing? Why not try this thing that could be really cool? Oh, if I fail, it's the same reason that made so much pain also opened up these doors to, oh, there's no need to stress. Oh, there's no need to worry. There's no need to ever, overcomplicate things because you got a very, very short time relative to, the universe.
Right.
So as much as all of those things before were broken down and lost, and I had thought my life had value. As soon as it had no value, I could choose what to value. And I didn't have to waste my time on worrying and stressing, and I could just choose the things that I wanted to care about.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter anyways.
Was there a gap between the despair feeling and that realization, or time frame gap, or was it a fairly quick turnaround?
That's a good question. I think there wasn't really a gap as much as there was a transition time. So it was like this one realization I had like maybe a year or two after I adopted pessimistic nihilism, which was the anguish and despair and woe is me. I had this realization, wait, why am I stressing? The very same thing I told myself, I'm going to die in 80 years. I'm going to be completely forgotten in a couple hundred more. Why am I spending the short time I have here stressing? And it was only after I had gone through all that I could be like, oh. So then from then on, it was very slow, but I started having more and more moments of, I'm worrying about this thing. Who cares? Like I can choose. And that was a huge shift.
That was a turning point.
Yes. For you. I could choose, which I hadn't been able to do before. Do I want to actually worry about this? And there are cases where I choose to worry about it and it has value in my opinion. But other times that I could just...
Yeah. So maybe you could choose to be depressed that it's cloudy again or something like that.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that's another great example of this, me being depressed that it's cloudy, is at the end of the day, either subconsciously or consciously, I'm choosing to do. And that's another thing, is a lot of those things before I found nihilism was subconscious, but still choices. Because at the end of the day, I could find a way to, stop caring.
Right.
And so that's where I wanted to get back around to those things that I talked about myself, those qualities, those traits, those facts about me are either subconsciously or consciously chosen and therefore fake.
So is there a real Isaiah that exists?
As far as humans are concerned, sure. Other than that, though, not at all. Not in the slightest.
And when you say humans are concerned, you're saying in our capacity can just construct a story or to construct
to make things up,
an image
and pretend things are real.
Yeah.
So can you define the word real then in this conversation?
Yeah.
Piece of cake.
Yeah, easy enough.
I'm not trying to stump you. I'm just trying
no.
to follow along with you guys.
It's good. It's good. I know, and I've got ways to explain it because I know it's a lot all at once. This is years and years of questioning and pondering and going on 3, 4, 5 hour drives with myself, just thinking about this. And
there were some tough years, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
For you.
Yeah. Really, really like figuring this stuff out and wanting to think about these things and making this my game to play. Reality, the way I've been using it, I would define as the closest thing to truth that many people subconsciously pretend is true. Which is a weird way to say it because for the most part, and maybe for some people it is just true. It is fact, but for me personally, I believe that truth is made up and reality is made up mostly subconsciously because you're born into a world and you have to cooperate and figure out how to move in this world and do things and interact with people. And so it's instinct. It's right out of the womb. You're having to figure that stuff out. So, but once you realize that we're all just playing these games with each other and, oh, he said, she said, do this, work these hours.
Yeah.
Outside of those things, all made up for itself. I don't know if that fully answers the question.
I mean, it's a little cliche and overused and bears, I think, introducing to highlight what you're saying. The Matrix maybe is a simile or a similar approximation of the difference between the real and the unreal.
Yeah, but not in the sense of we're stuck in the matrix or because
Somebody imposed it on us. Like the
yeah,
robots made
or
it.
that
Yeah.
it's bad that you're in it or it's good to get out, anything like that. It's
Well,
just
what about when you say, is Isaiah real? Are you, and you say no, are you basing that off of as like individualism or the actual material existence of the atoms that supposedly make up your body?
I see. I'm talking about the idea of Isaiah as a thing is made up by humans. And if that's real, and if your definition of real is what humans decide is real, then yes, I'm real. But outside of what humans say, this is real, that is real, an objective, altruistic, universal, what is true, I'm just a thing doing things.
So maybe you're saying, does the state of Idaho exist? Would be another similar question.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody someday.
Somebody said so.
made it
Sure.
up.
Yeah. But if you look at it, it's just some area.
It's just more dirt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lakes and
Yeah.
all that stuff. Yeah. The boundaries are a fantasy. Fictional.
And we pretend it's real because it really helps and makes society work and
Right.
things happen and
For this iteration of human society. And
this very short
yes,
iteration.
who knows how much longer before things like states and countries and cities will be silly and a thing of the past or something. Yeah.
Yeah. And so in my experience, finding that, and again, I could be like, this could just be crazy talk and just something crazy I'm saying. But my experience, that click has given me freedom and just fit in a lot with what I adopt now as optimistic nihilism.
Okay.
I mentioned pessimistic before,
Right.
but there was a shift to and a very clear difference between pessimistic and optimistic. Just, since nothing matters, or under this assumption, again, totally don't know anything at all. Under this assumption of nihilism, I now have adopted a pessimistic outlook of I can choose what matters.
You're saying optimistic now.
Yeah. Did
Yeah.
I say pessimistic?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Optimistic now.
Okay.
And so that idea that, the problems I have, the goals I have, the dreams I have, the people I meet, myself as an identity is all made up. They still have value because I give them value,
Right.
because people give them value, but they are as real as we make them, as real as we choose.
Which you are then telling yourself a story, even there, and playing a game. Can you not like? Is it possible to not tell yourself a story?
That's kind of what I'm trying to do, is to find outside of all story, what is there? And I'm kind of seeing outside of story, outside of games, there isn't really anything, in my opinion. If you do break it down and completely peel back all the layers, that's where I'm saying there is no reality.
But like even that, as you've self-admitted a lot of times, which I appreciate, in the conversation, you don't have any information to know that that's true or not. So that it's still a story. That there's nothing past the story.
That's true.
It made my mind even when we were talking about it in the other podcast
Last
episode.
time, yeah.
I was trying to go through this, of being like, well, even getting to the point where you are accepting and realizing that we're telling ourselves stories, you're having to tell a story to get there.
You are.
Even to get there. Like the journey to get there.
That's a great.
And then you get there, you're still telling yourself a story. Like I think, like even like you think of like the ultimate like Buddha, spiral dynamics type, like
Right.
I
agree, and I think another way to frame this is to try to define a word without using words. Or try to explain the beginning of all things without an irreducible complexity. for a lot of people, it's God or it's the Big Bang. And then you go, well, where did God come from? Or where did the matter and the Big Bang come from? And you have to say, I don't know. So I think that's where you get with a story loop, like you're talking about, or try to define a word without using other words. You can't, because maybe, like you said last time, we were missing that upgrade. We need a consciousness upgrade.
Like even just not caring, or even being like, well, I'm just going to lay down and die, and just because nothing matters, like there is nothing. And even like all of that's still a story that you're telling. That's what it is. Like, it's just so crazy. It just,
and that kind of ties in with my realization that humans only exist when there is story. And so humans are story, because we can't define anything without story.
Yeah. Like, I've always thought it was weird that we have labels on the oceans, because if you zoom out far enough, it's just a bunch of water and a bunch of land, or like continents, or maybe continents are a little bit more defined because they're broken up, but they say, okay, here's where the Pacific Ocean ends and the Atlantic Ocean starts, and vice versa. And there could be some underwater currents or some fault lines or something we could refer to. And at the end of the day, it's just a bunch of water all together on the surface of this planet. So they become different oceans because we put a story on it. We put a label on it, to define it, to help it makes sense.
Yeah, help with traveling and communication and
So even the idea of separateness, separate beings, is like oceans. You're an Isaiah, I'm a Stephen, you're a Daniel. There's some benefit there. There's some utility, some usefulness there.
Well, and there's some benefits, utility, and usefulness in having that individual and distinction with the game that we've all decided and agreed that we're playing.
Right.
So it is very helpful, and at the same time, they very well could not be helpful if we weren't playing this game.
That's a great point. Yeah, you could think of maybe a tribe somewhere that isn't playing the same game socially, and maybe names aren't important. Maybe distinct individuals aren't.
Yeah, I've seen some TikTok videos of people going over to some other country other than here, and they're literally like their names are clicks of the mouth of that tribe. Like, very odd, very not anything that would sound like an actual language. It's a literal different clicks and sounds is their name.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Has a different utility or different function. Yeah, so when I think about the real, like what's the real Isaiah or the real Daniel, the real any of us, I like your definition, explanation of it's just the story that we assign it, or the skin that we put over it, the layer that we put over it for usefulness. And then I think it's not really a good answer, it's just the best one I've heard, is the real is the thing that exists, the one thing that is, which we're all of. I won't say a part of, because that implies distinction, but we're all of. We all make up the isness of reality with a capital R, or we're all a part of God. Could be another way to say that. We're all the divine. And the we is, so there's an us that's made up and fake and fabricated and an illusion and a story and a game, and then there's the we, or the us, or the me, that is part of the only true real, which is outside of time, which is outside of definition, which we can't really speak about because words are insufficient. Maybe we can know, but to whatever degree we can know it, that's the real. And to whatever degree we try to explain it or talk about it, like I'm doing now, or just stories and games. And
would you agree that that definition that you just gave right there could completely be just completely tipped up on its head if you were to find out that there's different dimensions, or we're here like in a Truman bubble, like Truman Show bubble, and there's aliens we're just an experiment?
Yeah, if there was some other meta explanation for all of it, maybe.
Yeah, because you think about like the interconnectedness of all things. Say we were in a Truman Show bubble that might not have any impact or meaning outside of that Truman Show bubble.
Right.
Something that we're very not able to even comprehend.
It definitely would blow all that out the window. I think that kind of an explanation is almost like a substitute for some all-powerful entity that is controlling everything.
Sure.
Or, you know, a god in the heavens.
Could be, yeah.
Yeah, or the aliens, or whoever orchestrated the Truman bubble. Then they kind of get that place of this mystical oneness that I'm talking about.
Yeah, because just like what we're talking about here, and the whole reason that even religion even exists is to answer literally the one question of why are we here?
Right.
So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And how do we get here and all of that? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So I'd have to rethink all of that if the God of the Bible, or you know, some other God of some other religion demonstrated irrefutably that their existence, then I'd be like, oh, okay, maybe.
So what was it that got you on the idea of the answer to that question? Why are we here? All of us as one. Was there something that made you resonated with you with that, or what? Was it just the most likely answer? Was it something someone said?
Well, for most of my life, more than half of it, they had a very simple explanation for that question, which was the Judeo-Christian Western God that filled a lot of those voids and gaps. And then as that became less and less tenable and less believable, or something that I could hold because of contradictions and exposure to other ideas and more frontal lobe development, to name a few things.
You started seeing some holes in it.
So yeah, deconstruction, all that stuff, stepping aside, letting go of some things. And then it was like nature absorbs a vacuum. Like there was a big sucking in my brain or in my soul to fill that with something else. And so, yeah, I think that's something, a story or a game that I haven't figured out a way. I haven't figured out a different game, or I haven't decided to not want to play the game of solving that mystery, even if solving it is another level of mystery. Yeah, solving a mystery with more mystery, or embracing the mystery. Because to believe in God, any God, you have to, at some point, like I said, you have to get to a point, well, I just don't understand that, and God's just beyond that, and that's just, well, we're humans and he's God, so that's the explanation. So
what made you pick this one? This idea?
Probably because it's as far away from the way I was raised as possible.
That's very fair.
That's my knee-jerk reaction. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was, kind of very westernized religion, Christianity growing up, and Eastern ideas of non-duality were considered the devil, literally. The opposite, the yin and the yang. It was the shadow, and I knew it was in the light. So,
I think there could be argument to say that it was even a little bit more fundamentalist than many Western people experience.
Yeah, that's probably true.
I mean, I think more fundamentalist than, like, say, Catholics in a lot of respect.
Yeah.
And I think, you look at like the population of like that subgroup in America. So I think there was, some additional pressures on the previous way that you had been brought up as far as thinking was not necessarily. I guess what I'm getting at is there may be some listeners that have had a little bit different experience with Western Christianity,
right?
Christianity,
yeah, for sure. And
yeah,
that's something that I didn't even really realize until a few years ago either. My wife helped me out with that, explaining it to me that my version of Western Christianity was in and of itself a narrow stream, which I kind of knew. I mean, I always knew that I had the right stream and everybody else had the wrong stream of Christianity, to varying degrees. And then I found out I let a lot of that go and deconstructed, and my wife is on a similar journey, parallel, not the same, but parallel. And then we had some conversations which were just blew my mind to find out that what I had thought we both believed very strongly, some things that I would have considered foundational beliefs, she didn't feel quite as convicted about. And I was like, what? You weren't one of the chosen? Like, I thought for sure. And she's like, no, I mean, yeah, it was okay, but I didn't take it as seriously as you did some of these things and the other things I did. And so it was shocking to me. It didn't matter anymore at that point. But if I had found that out 10 years ago, it would have been really like
yeah, you
shaking.
had to work through some stuff.
Yeah, it would have been like, wait a minute.
Get on the right path.
Exactly. Because it was just, we met at a Bible school and we were in a very similar stream and very similar games that we wanted to play together, which made it an easy match. But a few of the stories I took for granted and I didn't even really think to talk about it or ask. I just assumed and then found out after the fact that she wasn't as convicted about some of the things that I just figured were the case. So that further highlighted to me how siloed I was in my experience of Christianity and didn't even know it. Yeah, I was kind of blinded to it. So
it gives reason for your shift to completely different.
Yeah, I think it's this exploring the what was forbidden, what was considered to be wrong, to go and push those boundaries and say, well, what if I do the very thing that was held out to be, death or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think I have enough familiarity with most versions of Western religion, whether it's Judaism or Christianity or LDS or Jehovah's Witness. They're all similar enough that to really make a departure from one is to depart from most of them if you want to make a clean break and try something new. So Eastern, Buddhist, Hindu, non-dual kind of represents everything that this isn't.
Right.
It fills in the other half of the human experience. So this feels like a place to play right now.
Yeah, and I definitely can see that happening because one thing that I've seen time and time again in my life that I've really found a lot of value in is humans tend to go in what I call pendulum swings. Often it takes, sometimes decades, but especially from childhood experience.
Right.
And then becoming an adult or early childhood to late childhood, whatever the time frame might be, especially when you're forced into an idea, a way of being, a system, a lifestyle, typically you will swing to the other side to experience the other way, which is oftentimes what you see in much more extreme Christian households. And as soon as someone from there goes off to college, they do all the things they're not supposed to, way more than someone who wasn't put in a Christian household, which is completely baffling to the parents because they raised them and had them with all these great values. Why are they doing these, drinking, smoking, sex, anything else? And it's oftentimes because they were constrained.
Yeah.
And so that holds true in a lot of other areas in life that I've seen. So it makes sense. It shows up here as well. If you were given this one way of thinking, whatever that way of thinking might be, then yeah, of course you're going to switch to the other side and try the other one.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think maybe the third option in that would be non-religious or anti-religious or atheistic or something like that, which I've definitely dabbled in. Dabble, that's not the right word, but played with, experimented with, integrated, tested out. Yeah, made more of a part of my being. I think, though, I've gotten this far in life, I think I'm probably always going to have a sense of wonder and awe, and there's something bigger and better out there, whether it's aliens or a God or just the mystical oneness of everything. I don't think I'll probably ever play the game or tell the story too hard of absolute naturalism. That's all just random chaos with absolutely zero purpose, and it's all meaningless. And I respect that position, and I think it's probably from if you're looking particularly at just evidence, it makes the most sense because there isn't really evidence for anything more than that. However, I just don't think I'd ever want to live in a world where that's all there was. So I'm always going to believe there's something else going on, which I think is what we all do if we're honest. is
Even the atheists?
yeah, I think so. I think non-belief is a belief. It's a belief in nothing, and I think that's
The religion of no one?
the religion of no one, or the religion of humanity is the thing. Or
I challenge that premise. Can you expound on why you believe that atheism is non-belief, or is a belief?
I guess I'm kind of framing it as everything's a positive and not just a negative. I don't know that you can really have a worldview based on being against or being not something or being lack of. So it's just framing a construct of the universe as mankind as the pinnacle, or the human experience is the height of nature, or something like that.
Maybe it's a different definition of religion. You guys might be missing each other on that, where you're saying everyone has religion. It's just, is the religion humans themselves, which would be quote unquote atheism, or something else. Whereas to Daniel, that might be saying, oh,
well,
it's not.
I guess where I'm getting the hang up is that I don't see atheism as the religion of people, as it's simply not accepting the made up version of one specific God, and then that specific God,
Right,
and then that specific God,
any specific God,
specific God that gets brought up. So I look at it to think about, well, like an atheist is almost like a non-smoker.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we only have to label that I'm a non-smoker because someone is smoking.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
So we don't. And so it's the same thing with there. The only reason that they have to have a label on someone who doesn't believe in that God is because somebody has believed in this God without evidence, and is then pushing that. So it seems disingenuous to me to put that responsibility on us for every possible made up imaginary thing that any human wants to do, and then we have to conform to, now we're a part of that system. So for me, because I guess the reason I'm probably challenging it more than maybe somebody else would is because I feel a connection to what you would typically call like an atheist.
Okay.
Because for just like you, for majority of my life, was an atheist of about 2,999 gods, and I wasn't an atheist about one God.
Right.
And so then to simply go, okay, well, just as much as I didn't feel that there was any proof or evidence that Thor was correct, or that Zeus was around and lived, I don't see any evidence that God exists. And so then I don't feel that I don't feel like that person that maybe assigns their feelings that way, or that's the game that they're going to be play, is required to come. It's not, the burden of proof is not put on them to have to explain why they don't believe in your. If I'm like, oh, there's, like it's famous, like, oh, there's a teacup that goes around the moon. Mm-hmm. Well, no, come on, Stephen. There's a teacup that orbits the moon. Do you have any evidence for it, Daniel? No, I don't have any evidence for it, but I know. And there was a book that talked about the teacup that orbits up there. Well, can we see it? No, we can't see it. It orbits, but we can't see it.
Yeah, you just have to take it on faith.
Yeah, and so now then that person who's like, so what are you talking about? I don't think it's fair to then say that you are having your own belief or your own faith.
So you're kind of saying the basis is lack of religion, and then if you want to have religion, that's the exception.
Yeah, that's where I come from, is that if I don't believe that, and not using the word religion as the interconnectedness of all things, I'm using the word religion as pretty typical Western religion.
Right.
I think, yeah, absolutely, that was a layer, a construct that was added to help answer a question of why are we here? Is this life meaningless? And to help us cope with that. And we have plenty of evidence that there was a lot of humans that had that same question that placed a layer that was not the Judeo-Christian God
Right.
in the Bible. And it predates that God
Right.
thought process by many years. And I'm not using that to prove that the Judeo-Christian God doesn't exist, but just simply the fact that this has been happening for a lot of people layering that onto that. And so then if someone doesn't want to accept that layering, largely because there is literally not a single bit of shred of evidence and proof that that is existing, we shouldn't shame that one person or say that person is doing something specific. They're having that thrown on them, pushed on them. They're just simply
Being passive.
I had someone I was talking to try when I was having this similar discussion, and me just kind of being like, kind of explaining that I don't fully ascribe too much, but also in just the idea of like, I'm not 100% sure. They tried to say, oh, so you're agnostic.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, again, that's just a label.
Right.
And I'm not, the whole point is that I'm not in any one label.
Right. No, it's good you brought that up, and Daniel, you too, because I think that's one of the things that we would like these conversations to be about is what are we really talking about?
Right.
And I did throw out the word atheist, and you caught me on that and said, wait, hang on a second. So defining terms and teasing out the nuances is an important part of having
Well, yeah, and
meaningful
even the words atheism and agnostic
Right.
really don't make sense because they're literally the same thing. Like if you say agnostic is, oh, I don't know. Well, that's literally the same thing the atheist is saying. They're just saying, yeah, I'm not putting my faith in. I'm not saying that exists. I'm just saying what you're showing doesn't have any amount of proof or anything to show me. But I also don't have proof to show you that there is no teacup that's circling the moon. So I'm just at a spot that goes, I could be, but we got no evidence for that. No one's shown any of that.
Well, yeah, exactly. So I think, atheist and agnostic, definitely there's a nuance there. And what you were describing classically, I think, would be a little bit more agnostic. The contemporary atheist, the Sam Harris, the Richard Dawkins, the Ricky Gervais, they tend to be a little bit more agnostic than traditional atheists, because a traditional atheist often can be a fundamentalist atheist that says, it's not that I don't know there is a God. I know there's not a God just as much as you say there is a God. And so they became this opposing force, because you can have fundamentalism in any worldview, in any ideology. And so I think the word has...
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, I think the word has started to evolve, as they all do, to mean somebody that's not saying, I know for certain there isn't a God. I just haven't been shown enough evidence that there is one. And without that, I'm not going to just take it on faith or on your word that there is. Yeah, which I think is a very reasonable, plausible, and viewpoint, and I identify with that. And so when I said atheist earlier in my conversation that you rightfully corrected me on, I meant the person who staunchly defends that they know for sure that there isn't a God.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Which isn't most anymore, I think.
I agree. Yeah. I'm following with you. I think, thank you for that clarification. Yeah, I would agree that would probably be the true, traditional view of the atheism, but I would say that most people that say that they align with that view is more of probably the agnostic, just not taking a really approach. Just I'm not sure.
Yeah, more evidence based. And then there's even one more degree of that, which is not as popular. It's an anti-theist, which a lot of the modern atheists, some of the more scholarly ones like Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins, would consider themselves anti-theists because they say not only is there no evidence that God exists, if there were a God that exists as described in the Bible, I wouldn't want that. That would not be desirable because that God is either can't be all good and all knowing, or can't be all good and all powerful, or can't be both of these things because of the apparent contradictions of the suffering. And they do a lot better job explaining their position than I can. So an anti-theist is somebody who, it not only says, yeah, there's no evidence that God exists. It's a good thing that he doesn't, and the world is better off that he doesn't. And so if we ever found out that God exists, we would be in a worse spot than we are. So I think I would say anti-theism is almost like a layer that you can add on to being an agnostic / atheist. Or you can just say, oh, I don't know. I haven't thought that hard. I don't really care. I just don't believe in God. You know?
Yeah.
So there's a spectrum
For sure.
there of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think what I was saying, maybe I'll add one more, would be a naturalist. A naturalist compared to what as I was using as a contrast for where I'm at, I don't know that I could ever be a true naturalist in the sense that I can't ever be convinced that there's nothing beyond the physical realm. And I think a naturalist, almost like what I said was a more conventional atheist, says, no, absolutely, this matter is all there is. There's no spiritual realm. There's no multiple dimensions. There's no woo-woo oneness, like all this stuff. It's just very materialistic. There's atoms, there's energy. We don't understand why. We don't know why it came from, but it is what it is. Once an organism stops living based on our definition, that's all there is. There's no consciousness that goes on, or consciousness is just our firing of our chemicals, our brain, all that sort of stuff. So yes, some naturalists are atheists. Some atheists are naturalists. They're not, always the same. They're not mutually exclusive, agnostics, all that. You can be a little bit of everything or none of the above, or some combination of it. So we're all a mix. I was simply just differentiating myself and saying, based on my life experience up to this point, I can't see ever having a version of myself where I deny the existence of something beyond the natural world.
And you don't have to go into depth on this or even explain it, but is that because, would you say that is because of like is that an emotional response of that you don't want to lose part of what you grew up with? Or would you say it's based on information that you've gained since the deconstruction, like books and other people and ideas and thought processes? I don't think one's bad or good. I'm interested to hear if it's more emotional or more logical. Yeah,
I don't know. It almost feels like it's too close to my eyes to read it or something like that. It's a great question, and
just need to wait.
I might need to
some time
chew on that one a little bit. I don't have an immediate answer that comes to my brain. I think the quick answer that comes is like, if the rules of the game change that much, I wouldn't want to play it anymore. Maybe. So it could just be a subconscious decision or an unconscious decision to not even. Because there was a time in my life when I could imagine if there wasn't a God in the sky that had ordered all these things and was ruling the universe, I wouldn't want to play that game either. And here I am. So yeah, that's a good one to chew on. I might have to come back to that one.
Okay, nice.
Well, we jumped in here on you, Isaiah. So what else is burning on your mind to say? Did you get it all out? Is there other stuff you wanted to talk about?
Well, yeah, to circle back around to the game I'm playing right now, which is Nothing Is Real. Kind of give some context about it, is where this kind of feel like it comes from was a lot of the work I did on nihilism, pessimistic and optimistic. And then over this last summer of 2023, I had a lot going on, moved out, started a new job, was in theater, school, and plenty more things, and didn't have time to care about the little things going on that used to fully make up my entire world. So something goes wrong, water's not working for my shower, I'm not able to set up my bed and can't get a full night's rest, my car breaks down on the way to work, all those things that could have been this drama for me, I didn't have a choice to be able to let them matter. I couldn't spend time and dwell or make them a big deal because I had so much going on.
I see.
And so as that was happening, I reflected back and saw that, okay, so if there is a possibility where those things don't matter because I couldn't let them, that means that when they do matter, that must be some choice I'm making consciously or subconsciously.
Because that's the only thing that's changed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Is I have this ability to let them matter. So that was kind of what started this journey I'm on right now and I started looking around at these other people and these problems they come to me with, or the dramas they were having, or he said, she said, or whatever it might be. And just realizing, yeah, that is your choice to do those things and make those things a big deal, and just the kind of this eye-opening experience. And again, could be made up, could be like I could be crazy talking this happening, but it feels pretty true right now and felt true back then, that just having so much going on that when things went quote unquote wrong,
Right.
big quotes there,
Yeah.
it wasn't a problem. It was just do this solution and move on to the next thing. It wasn't this morality or this emotional thing.
You weren't creating a story around the event.
The story was removed.
So what about like the online definition of nihilism that we talked about earlier? It states the rejection of all religious and moral principles in the belief that life is meaningless. You have quite a few times been specific to say that that's a story you're telling, or that you think. Are you leaving the door open for other possibilities, namely religious possibilities?
So you guys were talking about your differing views and how you got there, and trying to get into definitions and terms and things. And I brought up that the one friend I talked with said, okay, so you're agnostic.
Agnostic, right?
I, at least in that area, didn't know what to say, but if I could go back, I would say, what's the definition for someone who is agnostic but still actively looking? So it's kind of...
Well, then you wouldn't be nihilistic then, because you haven't rejected all religious. According to this definition of nihilism, you're stating that you haven't rejected all religious and moral principles and the belief that life is meaningless necessarily.
There was that rejection before.
Okay.
Because I still was raised when you were pretty Christian. So that was at the time. It's a very good point. I'd have to rethink about it for now. But at the time, it was a complete rejection of all religion to, so there's nothing. And then that was like the...
So maybe you kind of like flushed everything down the drain.
Yeah,
and
reset,
then kind of
maybe.
rebuilt a little bit. So maybe you were kind of pessimistic nihilism, then to optimistic nihilism, and now maybe a little bit closer to a searching agnostic.
Yeah. And also still have no attachment to anything spiritual, religious, or anything like that. So still maybe not nihilistic in the form of like rejection, but just still haven't come out of it to anything else. So there's nothing that's replaced that void other than just a search and an open-mindedness of, what could there be?
A buddy of mine and I were driving in the city the other night looking for a parking spot on a Friday night, and we had a reservation at a restaurant, and we're just like, all right, well, I guess we can hopefully find a spot. Hopefully we don't miss our reservation, but if we do, we'll go to another restaurant. Not a big deal. Well, let's just try this parking garage. So, okay, got the parking garage and got a spot, got to the restaurant. Everything worked out. It was fine. And then we were talking about it afterwards, and we were saying, yeah, there's an unattached initiative that was happening, because if we'd literally just taken my foot off the gas, put the car in parked, and sat in the middle of the street, we certainly weren't going to find a parking spot that way. And at the same time, we accepted the fact that we might not, and just have to pivot and do something different with our evening, and we were okay with that. And then we eventually did find a spot and got to eat, and it was fine. We had a nice time, but it was a different posture from panicked and getting stressed and worrying and trying really hard to get a spot so we didn't miss the reservation.
Definitely.
But we also didn't just accept complete and utter unattachment where we just sat there in the middle of the road and waited.
Which is an option.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, which is to do truly and fully and completely without attachment to anything is next to impossible, other than, you know, meditation and dedication to this life of losing ego.
Well, yeah, it's really hard because it's literally the lack of any expectation.
Exactly.
And even I just expect that I'm going to naturally take a couple breaths here in the next couple seconds. So yeah, if you literally didn't have any expectations, it would be really hard. Like even just, I'm expecting my left foot to go in front of my right foot when I'm walking. Like, yeah, it would be really hard.
But what you were talking about with like the parking spot and being willing to not find a parking spot, I would personally define as some work you've done to let that part of your ego go and not hold on to that. We have to find a parking spot. We have to be able to make it in time, which in my definition would be some attachment to ego.
Right.
This me has to do this for myself. And that's where in some of the, when I was looking at people around me as I was going through this realization that things matter if you choose for them to matter, I was seeing a lot of the people who had strong attachments to things and thought things mattered a lot in their world, they mattered a lot, was very ego heavy. Me, my story, attachment. And the other side of the coin that I experienced of, oh, this terrible, quote unquote, terrible, bad thing happens, I didn't have care. And I was just sitting in wonder at, wow, man, this really shitty thing just happened. And I just can't make myself care. I just have to do the next thing and move on. And it wasn't good. It wasn't bad. It was just, and that, in my opinion, and my definition, would be detachment from ego.
Well, yeah, and I think that matches up with the what we talked about with the story that we tell ourselves, because I think if you think about the parking situation, I think it's because there's deeper layers of why we care about this attachment is because I'm not the type of person that doesn't find a parking spot.
Or shows up late for a reservation.
Right, or shows up late,
yes,
or
and
can't
that's attachment.
go. Right, exactly. Yes. And so it's not even necessarily probably the attachment to the parking spot or finding one.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's, I'm not the person who can't find one in front of my friend sitting next to me. You know, like, so I think that because what you were able to do is to not care about what type of person you were when that quote unquote bad thing happened. When that experience happened to you, you were able to not have that experience of having to go, I'm not this person who allows this to happen. So this is really crappy. This is a really bad situation.
Yes, I had to let that go. I had to let this idea of myself who does these things, accomplishes these things, doesn't have bad things happen. I had to let all of that go to be able to instantly solve the problem and move on.
So how would you describe letting it go? Like, what were the mechanics behind that? How did you let it go?
It's a tough question.
You said some driving around hours in your car.
Yeah, it was definitely in tandem with a lot of contemplation and awareness of these things that I had beforehand. But then when the time came and I was, you remember me at the time, 4 hours of sleep, show up to work, go to theater, come home and study for 5 hours.
Zombie kind of thing, yeah.
It did have plenty of downsides of I really wasn't fully a person, like in some of the regards that we like to call ourselves people and have identity. I just didn't have those things, like flat out. I was doing the things. And so to answer your question, it wasn't even fully a choice. It was just, if I wanted to continue, it was more of the attachment to the person that will finish what he started, accomplish the tasks, do the things, because I valued those things. all the other things had to fall away to make room for that to stay.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. In my experience, it's very similar to my experience, which has been to the degree that I can let go. It isn't really letting go as much as just a noticing. And sometimes just a noticing multiple times over and over and over again, or asking myself the question, like Daniel said, about what am I attached to being? What kind of person does this make me? Do I want to be as a result of this? So getting triggered is a great space to ask that question of oneself. If you feel your blood pressure rising, or you're getting annoyed, and you maybe have enough awareness to know that this feels like I'm making a bigger deal out of this than I really need to, or somebody else might experience the same thing and not feel as agitated about this as I am.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to go, well, and it's because this person's an idiot, or because they did that thing, or they cut me off in traffic, or they...
Whatever you have to say to keep that attachment.
Right. Yeah. To justify it. Mm-hmm. And the harder... At first, it's harder, then it gets easier, is to say, what does this say about me that I don't like, that this is happening right now? So, yeah, if you go to take a shower and all the hot water's off, and you could be annoyed because these people in this house don't take enough respect, and if they took quicker showers, there'd be enough hot water left for me. And I've told everybody 1,000 times, why don't they? Now I'm stuck with wait a minute, what is it about me? Oh, I don't want to be the person that gets the leftovers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be the person that's stuck.
Yeah, I don't want to be the person that their family doesn't treat with respect.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Probably even more so than I don't want to be stinky, because
right.
Yeah, that's okay. But,
well, and you could take a cold shower.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But it's the feeling of, that I don't want to be the person who's taken advantage of.
Right.
Which is different.
You could get disrespected by some stranger, and you don't care about it because it's not telling a story about yourself, but you get disrespected by your family, and then you're like, I'm not the type of person that gets disrespected. That allows that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's a great question I found to ask myself when I feel triggered, annoyed, aggravated, upset. And then if I can see what's really going on and just sit with it, just let it be, just experience it, just feel it. Oh yeah, I hate that feeling. Oh yeah, of course I don't want that. That's ugly. I don't think I want to be that person. And then for me, kind of like it sounds like you're saying, Isaiah, it eventually evolves into, I can let it go because I see it. It only is a thing when it's in the shadow, when it's in the dark, when I'm hidden from it, when I'm unconscious about it, then it has power. Mm-hmm. And the more that I just shine the light on it and sit with it and look at it, the less and less I notice it reoccurring.
Yeah.
It kind of fades away.
The more you can see that it's actually about this character you built and these attachments you have. And then, I mean, it's not to say like lose all attachment or like completely let all of that go, because if you do fully let that go, you park in the street and you sit there and you...
Or you just don't get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's...
Right. It's hard to play the game of 8 billion people living on this earth with not doing any of that.
Yes. That just doesn't happen. Humanity dies. And which is not to say good or bad either. That's just a thing that could happen.
Yeah.
I had this one speculation tangent for a second here. This thing I told my friends that kind of blew their minds as a fun like party trick. I said, if everyone died all at once in the same instance, it would not matter because no one would be around to suffer. Just kind of on the same idea of, but then
that's true.
And then it's like, well, there's no one around to enjoy life anymore, so that's a bad thing. But then there's no one to experience the lack of life because we're all not existing. And
that's true.
Anyways, tangent for a sec, but yeah, it's not to say lose all attachment, except that the world pushes you in the ocean and waves and flow with it. But just, if there's things holding you down, you have the choice to let them go. And it will mean ego death and pain and losing this a part of yourself that you've probably been attached to for a while. But I personally found a lot of value in that temporary void of a human that I was for that time of, I wasn't outside of the things I was doing, didn't really have a character.
Right.
There was a lot of growth that I saw there in realizing that that was an option and I wasn't stuck in those things, because that's what it feels like a lot of times is you don't have a choice. You have to
you're a victim of
exactly. Yeah. And that's all just your brain trying to keep your ego, because it thinks that without ego, you're nothing, which isn't true. You can exist without ego.
Mm. So anything you'd want to add to sum all this up?
Yeah, basically, like, the reason that this really like resonated with me, really, like, I've been thinking about this all for like past 6 months, basically, was there was these few moments where it was this powerful like peace, and there was like this general like calmness and satisfaction during all the chaos that you wouldn't expect. But these few moments, like sitting backstage when I was rehearsing or performing actually this play, way too hot. It was summertime. I was in these way too uncomfortable clothes, waiting to go on stage for way too long. You know, I hadn't eaten in hours. I was terribly thirsty, running on 3 hours of sleep, had worked an 8-hour shift just before. And in all of these like very human problems, I just like looked around and like couldn't be happier. And it was just like so at peace in all of these things, because I realized that they just didn't matter. And even though I still felt hungry, still felt tired, still felt all like I felt it all, but the story that I layered over wasn't woe is me, this is so terrible. It was, this is just what's happening, and look at me, I'm alive.
Wow.
And I get to keep living with all this stuff going on.
Wow. So would you say that's maybe like an example of the optimistic nihilism that you mentioned earlier?
Definitely. Yeah.
Cool.
That would definitely be like a why worry if it's all gonna be over anyways? And look, I get to experience this.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Anything else to add? I'm feeling pretty full. How about you guys?
Good.
Till next time.
Until next time.
Till next time.
Thank you. All right.
Good job.
Nice.